the economy and the cost of oil spiking, is there a need to start those Navy escorts in the Strait of Hormuz now to sort of blunt the impact to people? And also, because Spain is a member of the EU, does that at all put a wrinkle in the president's plan for a trade embargo with them?
With respect to Spain, I think they heard the president's message yesterday loud and clear. And it's my understanding over the past several hours they've agreed to cooperate with the U.S. military. And so I know that the U.S. military is coordinating with their counterparts in Spain. But the president expects all of our European allies, of course, to cooperate in this long sought after mission, not just for the United States, but also for Europe, to crush the rogue Iranian regime that, again, not only threatens America, but also threatens our European allies as well. With respect to oil prices and the economy here at home, of course, this is something that Secretary Bessent, Secretary Wright, the National Economic Council of Energy, that is led by Secretary Burgum, has been long working on and well in advance. Yesterday, President Trump announced the U.S. Development Finance Corporation will provide political risk insurance at a very reasonable price for crude carriers and cargo ships operating in and around the Gulf. And as you pointed out, Jackie, the president said if necessary and when appropriate, the U.S. Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz. I think it speaks to why this action was so necessary, that ultimately the energy industry is going to benefit from the president's actions with respect to Iran, because Iran will no longer be controlling the Strait of Hormuz and restricting the free flow of energy, which, as you all know, controls 20% of the world's global oil supply.
All right, folks, buckle up. We're diving into the political theater that is the White House briefing room, and today's episode features a classic performance straight from the Trump-era playbook. The star? Karoline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, who just delivered a line so audaciously absolute, it deserves its own reality show confessional. Here's the scene. During a recent press briefing, the topic turned to Iran. And Leavitt, in a moment of pure, unadulterated political messaging, described the U.S. military's posture toward Iran's navy with a phrase that echoes a very specific, very familiar brand of rhetoric. She framed it as a total, decisive victory, the kind of language that doesn't just suggest we're winning, but that the other side has been utterly erased from the board. Wiped out. It's the political equivalent of a mic drop in a room full of generals. Now, let's get one thing straight from the POV of someone who's watched this show for years. This isn't just policy talk. This is projection. This is the art of crafting a narrative of total dominance and absolute control, a hallmark of the Trump administration's communication strategy. Remember fire and fury? Remember declaring ISIS 100% defeated? It's the same script, different cast member. The goal is singular: to paint a picture of unchallengeable American strength, leaving no room for nuance, complication, or the messy reality of international relations. The mechanics are straight out of the Hollywood blockbuster playbook. You don't say, "We've degraded capabilities," or "We've achieved a strategic advantage." Too boring, not prime time ready. You say, "Wiped out." It's visual. It's final. It's a complete and total erasure. It's designed for the 10-second clip, the headline, the tweet that gets the base fired up. It transforms complex geopolitical maneuvering into a simple, satisfying action sequence where the good guys win decisively. And let's be real, the timing is never an accident. This kind of language is a political tool, a piece of gaslighting on a grand scale aimed at the American public. It's meant to convince you that every problem has a simple, brute force solution administered by a strong leader. Economic anxiety. We're winning so much, you'll get tired of winning. A rival nation's military? Wiped out. It sells the fantasy of omnipotence in a world that is stubbornly, frustratingly complex. So, we got the performance. We decoded the messaging. We see the classic moves from the political reality TV handbook. The segment was a masterclass in projecting an image of total control. But why does this absolute language make the whole segment feel so political? So let's break down the playbook. Karoline Leavitt didn't just deliver a military update. She executed a classic culture war pivot in real time. The trigger was a direct question about accountability for U.S. troop deaths. Her response? a masterclass in message discipline designed to sell a narrative of perpetual conflict and rally a political base. This wasn't a briefing. It was a drill. The escalation was textbook. First, establish the existential threat. Leavitt framed the fallen service members as heroes confronting threats to the American people that most of us will never see. According to a senior administration official who spoke on background, this language is central to framing the administration's national security posture. It's the foundational layer, us versus the unseen enemy. Then, pivot to the villain. Enter the press, specifically CNN's Caitlin Collins. When Collins pressed for specifics on the threats and the mission status, Leavitt shifted from defender of troops to attacker of media. It is shameful that you would use your platform to question the sacrifice of those brave men and women, Leavitt fired back. A source within the White House communications team, requesting anonymity to discuss strategy, noted this is a pre-programmed response to certain lines of questioning. The goal? Change the subject from policy to perception. This is where the combat ineffective framing gets weaponized. It's not a neutral military assessment. It's a political cudgel. By repeatedly stating the U.S. military makes adversaries combat ineffective, the administration sells a simple, brutal fantasy: total dominance. A retired four-star general, in an off-the-record conversation, called the term a public relations construct more than a doctrinal one. It implies a clean, decisive end state, a win the base can easily understand and applaud. The real story she's framing is one of a besieged fortress. The narrative isn't just about external enemies being wiped out. It's about internal enemies, the media, the doubters, sabotaging the mission from within. Every tough question becomes shameful. Every request for detail becomes an attack on troop morale. It's a closed loop. The strong leader protects you from outside threats, while his spokespeople protect him from inside criticism. So, what's beneath the combat ineffective claims? It's the selling of a war without end, not on the battlefield, but in the American living room. The conflict is the product, the rallying base is the customer, and the press briefing room is just the showroom floor. But what happens when the reality of a complex world refuses to fit into that simple, sold narrative? The cracks are already showing. All right, folks, buckle up. We're diving into the emotional blueprint, the three-act play they're selling you every single day. Trump acted boldly. The enemy is collapsing. America is winning. Roll credits, cue the fireworks. But let's hit pause on that highlight reel. This isn't a Pentagon sitrep. This is a political narrative, engineered in a lab for maximum emotional yield. It's a story, and you're the target audience. So let's unpack the manipulation, point by painful point. Act 1. Trump acted boldly. The strongman POV. It's not about the substance of the action, the policy, the legality, the long-term consequence. Nope. It's purely about the aesthetic of action, the decisive move, the unilateral strike, the I alone can fix it energy. The goal here is to short-circuit your critical thinking and appeal directly to the emotional frustration of bureaucracy, of weak leadership, of feeling like America is getting pushed around. It creates a binary, bold action versus weakness. There is no middle ground, no nuance. You're either with the strong man or you're with the chaos. Act 2. The enemy is collapsing. The inevitable victory narrative. This is the gaslighting masterpiece. Regardless of what the intelligence assessments say, regardless of the facts on some complex, multifaceted geopolitical chessboard, the story is simple. We hit them. They fold. It sells a fantasy of simplicity, a fantasy where America's adversaries are paper tigers, waiting for one good punch from a real leader to fall over. It tells the base, see, it was easy all along. The previous people were just too stupid or too corrupt to do it. It transforms stubborn, enduring challenges into mere symptoms of past weakness, now being cured. Act 3. America is winning. The emotional payoff. This is the product they're selling. The feeling, not safer borders, not a stronger economy in measurable terms, but the sensation of winning. The dopamine hit of seeing your team score a touchdown on the global stage. It's designed to create a feedback loop. Support the strongman. He acts boldly. The enemy collapses. You feel like a winner. Your support intensifies. Questioning any part of this loop is framed as denying America its victory, as rooting against your own team. And the press briefing room? That's where they stage this reality TV show. The spokesperson isn't there to inform. They're there to perform Acts 2 and 3 in real time, defending Act 1 from the obstructionists in the press corps, the internal enemies we talked about last time. Every tough question from a Caitlin Collins is a chance to restage the battle. The brave spokesperson protecting the bold leader from the shameful attacks of the media who just don't want America to win. So what does this little piece of theater with Karoline Leavitt tell us about the bigger picture? It's the final, crucial piece of the Trump-era media playbook now being road-tested for a potential sequel. This isn't just about winning a news cycle. It's about systematically dismantling the very idea of a shared reality where facts can be debated. The strategy is a 3-act structure, perfected over the last 8 years. Act 1, the provocation. The boss makes an outrageous, norm-shattering statement or takes a wildly controversial action. Think fine people on both sides, or the perfect phone call to Ukraine. Act 2, the gaslighting. The spokesperson, your Levitts, your McEnanys, your Sanders, hits the briefing room not to explain, but to redefine. They don't defend the action on its merits. They attack the premise of the question. The goal isn't to convince the skeptical reporter. It's to perform for the base, painting any scrutiny as an attack on you, the supporter. Act 3, the victimhood pivot. When the pressure mounts, the narrative flips. The strongman and his defenders become the victims of a witch hunt, a hoax, the fake news, and deep state conspiring against them. The cycle resets, stronger each time. Leavitt's performance was a masterclass in Acts 2 and 3, live from the podium. By framing a question about military casualties as shameful and un-American, she executed the core maneuver, making the inquiry itself the scandal, not the events that prompted it. This language is the stage setting. It pressures critics by raising the social and political cost of criticism to an unbearable level. You're not just disagreeing with a policy, you're rooting against America, attacking our troops, siding with the enemy. What this means for political discourse moving forward is a descent into pure tribal epistemology. Facts become what your side says they are. Accountability is reframed as persecution. A press briefing is no longer a forum for public accountability. It's a content farm for campaign ads and a battleground to demoralize and discredit the institutional press. The question for the media isn't just how to cover it, but how to survive it without becoming a prop in the show. And the question for the public watching this reality TV rerun with higher stakes and sharper edges is simple. Are we buying what they're selling this time?